My name is Marcos Quiñones, and I run Eye Therapy out of New York City, Lower Manhattan. And we've been using my best practice before COVID. I was thinking about this earlier, so I'm thinking may have been 2019 or 18 or so. The software has grown as my company has, so it almost parallels the growth. Well, like most people in my field, one of the main challenges is documentation. I have a story about early on. I went to a doctor's office, and the doctor barely looked at me. The doctor was just looking at their EHR, typing away. And I remember sitting there and thinking, gosh, I hope this is never my experience as a therapist. So that was it. I used to work for a Medicaid clinic, and we were told that because of that, audits, that we needed to have our documentation up to par. So we spent a lot of time in the documentation. So when I started thinking of an EHR, I was one of the big things was documentation. I wanted myself and my employees, if I ever had any, to just kind of go in and come out. Like, don't spend very much time in the EHR. And that's how my best practice seemed to me. This at the time, I remember that the documentation, you had to type every single thing down. And that was one of the things I liked about my best practice, that you didn't have to do that. And again, the client engagement. I don't remember my best practice, I mean, my simple practice having a client engagement part early on. So I had to enter all that information myself, whether it was an intake form, address, name, all this stuff that now I don't have to do. Uh, and the way my best practice approached it, I appreciated, which was allowing the customer, the client, to actually engage and take ownership of their own therapy and engage with the software. So they had the client portal where they can get their receipts, their invoices, they could get worksheets from there, they could fill out their intake form and put in their credit card. Nowadays, it's not like back in the day where people just give you their credit card. Uh, but it's funny how the software has scaled to my practice, because just last week, a client didn't want to give me their credit card, but they were happy to go into the system and enter it themselves. So by having the customer kind of engage on their own, took away a lot of the time I spent on the software, on documentation. Again, my motto has always been to get in and get out. So there's a lot of features on my best practice that have been implemented over the years that I rarely use. One of the main thing for me is the documentation and having access to bringing over notes from previous sessions, because oftentimes I'm an act therapist and I do a lot of similar things from one session to another. And bringing that note over and just adding as any nuances uh, is actually how the brain works. So it's great. It's great. I use the features of creating notes and having the software recommend, suggest ways of working. That's always been helpful, because when I'm creating a note, I'll look in the available choices, for example, acceptance and commitment therapy, and maybe something like a certain metaphor, or maybe a certain worksheet, or a concept. The software will ask me, did I use that concept? And that'll give me an idea to use the concept. So what I do is I'll make a mental note, I'll write it down, and then I'll go out and use the different concepts. And it's so robust, the documentation area, that it has everything I would do in ACT. So sometimes I just kind of browse through there to see if there's any suggestion I could take from the software to actually apply to my clinical work. Another thing I noticed early on was how robust the support was. So again, early on, there were a small crew there, and I would reach out directly. But after a while, as the company started to grow, I noticed that a lot of emphasis was put on support and helping the clinicians actually navigate the software. And I felt that it was very personable. Like it wasn't your typical AI or canned responses. There were people who actually knew the software and knew what you were talking about. In some instances, they may have been clinicians themselves. And so they understood what I was talking about when I was struggling with an area. Additionally, when I saw there was a feature that was missing or could be enhanced, or any of my employees complained about something, there were people that I could go to suggest it, to ask for something that I wanted from the software. And oftentimes it was considered and implemented. So I really like that it's such a personable company that your suggestions are not only welcome, but they're kind of elicited. So to have the software grow with your own company and the way you do work. So I really like that part. When I think of making a decision that may affect me in the future, right? I go back to when I was young, 18, and I joined the military. I didn't know at that time that I would have health care for the rest of my life. And here I am in my 60s and still benefiting from free health care, a decision I made when I was 18. So again, pre-COVID, I had to make a decision on which EHR to go into. And I didn't know at the time I would scale. And, things happened where I went from one intern to two employees to five to nine. And at our peak, we were at nine clients. And the interesting thing about the software was that it scaled with me. The price was right. The scalability was easy. I didn't have to reach out to support or anyone to just start adding employees, and I just added them and then gave them their logins, and the software did it all for them, completely. So it was such a easy transition to go from just one person to nine people using the software and training them on it. Uh, that I like to I like to suggest to early on clinicians to think about the decisions they make early on, whether it's to choose a a modality to go with, to choose a therapy school to run with, to choose an EHR, something that in 5 or 10 years you're going to look back and you're going to say, "Wow, that was a good decision," because here I am still using the software after 6, 7, 8 years, or the therapy or the modality, whether you work with couples or individuals. These decisions kind of stick with you for your career. So it's a good idea to think about what's it going to look like in 5 or 10 years.